All right, I am going to get us started here. I want to thank you all for joining. It's so nice to see some familiar faces, some familiar names rather, and some new names. See reflected here in the attendee list. I see we have a few of CEO's employment partners on the call. Know that it's an honor to work with you guys, and I'm glad that you're able to make it to this event today. I actually also noticed that there are a few members of CEO's Young Professionals group on the call as well. Our YP members, for those who don't know, are just some really incredibly talented emerging leaders who work at companies across various industries. And they lend their expertise to support CEO's mission, serving as some skilled-based volunteers. So it's great to kind of see those folks on the call as well. Before I do get started, I just want to acknowledge Cynthia Thompson. She's the editor and publisher of HR Professionals magazine. She graciously extended this event invitation to those who are subscribed to HR Professionals magazine. So if you're joining today and you are a subscriber of that magazine, you will receive HRCI and some SHRM credits for your attendance today. It's great news. And so with that, I think we can kind of get into it. So hello, once more. My name is Niclese Richards. I am the Donor Relations Officer here at CEO. And in my role, I oversee our individual giving strategy and our approach, as well as our corporate engagement strategy here at CEO. As part of our growing effort to be a resource to the corporate community, we began thinking intentionally about how we can best serve the CSR, DEI, and hiring teams of our employment partners across industries. And in an effort to kind of bring the best equitable kind of employment environments to fruition, we launched our corporate roundtable. This is our very first, and are excited to kind of share some of the resources that we've been working on here at CEO with you all. Really hope that you all find it valuable. I will get things started by talking a little bit about CEO's mission. So the Center for Employment Opportunities is often referenced by its acronym, CEO. And we provide immediate, effective, and comprehensive employment services exclusively to individuals who have recently returned home from incarceration. We are one of the largest workforce reentry organizations in the country. And to date, we operate 30 offices across 11 states and we've provided more than 35,000 job placements with more than 4,000 employers across the country. I'll share a little bit about how we train and educate and prepare these individuals for the workforce by sharing a little bit about our program model. So CEO's program model has 4 main pillars. We, as mentioned, work exclusively with folks whose lives have been impacted by the justice system. Most people that we work with are under community supervision, which just means they have a parole or probation officer. Our program kind of starts off with orientation, which is essentially about a week long. And we prepare individuals to enter or re-enter the workforce through that orientation. Immediately upon graduation from orientation, we employ these individuals on one of our transitional employment crews, where these folks get access to immediate employment. They get paid every single day via a pay card service. We provide that pay card in the form of a debit card almost. It can function as a debit card and allows them to receive their wages at the end of every daily shift. In tandem with working in the community, they are also receiving high quality job coaching services. They are assigned to a job coach who provides them with all types of resources to prepare them to begin interviewing with employers outside of CEO to get access to a full-time or permanent job. Our business account managers serve as internal staffing agencies, if you will. They pair really highly skilled CEO participants with incredibly incredible vacancies with some of our employment partners within the community. Once a business account manager is able to effectively place a CEO participant in a vacancy at a permanent employment job within the community, our participant then gains access to up to 365 days of ongoing career mentorship through our retention specialists. So great services for our CEO participants, but also a great service to employment partners who want to get access to highly skilled individuals from a credible organization. I'll talk a little bit about today's agenda. You will hear from my colleague, Sam Hanna, who will talk a little bit about inclusive hiring here at CEO. Then we'll transition into our panel discussion where you'll hear some incredible remarks and some data from our distinguished panelists. I really, really can't wait for that. And then we'll wrap up. That'll be the day. So with that, I'll kick things over to my colleague, Sam Hanna.
Hi, everybody. And again, thank you all for giving us your time and attention today. So as Nicole mentioned, we wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about why CEO, started diving in a little bit deeper into inclusive hiring and what that really means. So there's a lot of stats in front of you, but primarily I want us to focus on the number of people being released from incarceration each year, and the number of people who are currently on parole and probation. So, over 600,000 people are being released from incarceration every year. And over 4.5 million people or so are on active parole or probation, which means that they have they're being actively supervised, and that in and of itself comes with additional barriers. And as you see there, 1 in 5 Americans has a criminal record of some sort. So some additional stats when we're thinking about inclusive hiring, we're not just thinking about, being inclusive for men and women who are coming home from incarceration, but we need to think of it in a little bit of a broader sense. So 1 in 3 Black men can expect to go to prison in their lives, and 1 in 6 Latino men can expect the same. The LGBTQ population is also disproportionately affected by the criminal justice system. LGBTQ people are incarcerated at a rate almost 3 times higher than the total population. And between 1980 and the year 2019, the number of incarcerated women has increased by over 700%. So not only are people being released from incarceration in mass and are immediately in need of services, but the impact, spreads across, all races, all genders. The collateral consequences that folks face upon returning from incarceration include, barriers to getting a driver's license, fines and fees that are, automatically put on somebody's driver's license, or your driver's license being suspended as a part of your release. Background checks related to finding stable housing in an apartment, or the inability to get certain vocational certificates due to your previous incarceration. So just wanted to frame the massive need for the corporate world to sort of start thinking about this and embracing inclusive hiring in a way that, perhaps they haven't previously. We can go to the next slide. So, as a result of this, incredible growing need, the SHRM Foundation reached out to the Center for Employment Opportunities to help create some tangible, actionable tools for not only HR professionals, but executive leadership all the way to floor managers and supervisors. Briefly, SHRM is the Society for Human Resources Management, and their mission and vision is to create a world of work that works for all. So naturally, with CEO's mission of inclusiveness and hiring anybody and everybody who has a criminal record that wants to work, the partnership was a natural fit. So these tools were created, as I said, not just for HR professionals to get an additional credit, but to give HR professionals, managers, executives tangible, actionable ways that they might be able to create or improve their own inclusive hiring strategies internally. The idea is to give a little more context around the justice system and some insight into what some people might be going through as they move their way from from arrest to criminal charges to incarceration to release, and what that really means for somebody. The certification goes through an in-depth or some myth busting. For example, formerly incarcerated people are no more likely to be fired for misconduct than those who have not had any justice involvement. And also people with criminal records also have higher retention rates once they are employed, typically because there is an eagerness and a drive to succeed and not recidivate. We go through some talent acquisition do's and don'ts. And we also discuss how to signal that you're open to working with returning citizens on either your mission statements or what your job ad looks like. As a part of the tools that we created, we also created a what we're calling a Getting Talent Back to Work self-assessment. And this tool is basically 10 short questions for either, again, an HR manager or a professional of any kind, to answer just a few things about what they're interested in, how their current internal initiatives align with this kind of a work. And then once the assessment is filled out, it spits back out a customized PDF generated specifically for what you're interested in, and gives you, again, some more of those actionable, tangible ways that you might be able to create a more inclusive workspace. Next slide. So to date, these tools launched just in this past January, and this curriculum and certification has outperformed most of SHRM's other similar certifications and curriculums. So just really wanted to speak to the fact that there is a need. The industry the industry is recognizing that there needs to be something done, and there's also a desire and an appetite to learn more about this kind of work and how to integrate it into your own businesses and how to do it successfully. So just wanted to kind of point out that you're not alone in this. There are a lot of organizations and HR professionals who are looking to tackle this, and there are tools out there and resources and organizations just like Center for Employment Opportunities and SHRM, which is the largest Society for Human Resources folks in the country. There's about 300,000 or so members of SHRM. Next slide. So as we discussed a little bit before, Center for Employment Opportunities is the country's largest organization doing what we do. And we have, as we said, just decided to, really take this on from a larger perspective, the issue of getting people with criminal convictions in their history a fair opportunity at work. So CEO has some ways that we can either help you deliver on your current DEI or inclusive hiring initiative. And that might be our direct hiring services that Niclise was discussing, where you could work with a local CEO office in your city or your neighborhood, and open your jobs to those people that are in the program there. Our transitional work crews are also an excellent way for partners to engage with people with criminal convictions. Our transitional work crews provide daily transportation to and from the job site for crews of typically about 5 to 7 people. We provide a site supervisor to help with the transportation, of course, as well as just the execution of the work and making sure that expectations are being met, but also they're a coach, a guide, a mentor, a manager to all of those people that are on that work crew, and they form really strong bonds with all of the participants that we're serving on that particular work crew on that day. So it's a really great tool for businesses to sort of, I liken it to like a long-term working interview for a business where you can get to see a group of people working at your facility, get to understand who likes the work, who's good at the work, and then you can hire anybody from that crew directly into your business as a full-time employee, and really, sort of develop a pipeline for full-time hires. As we discussed, we created some tools and some guidance so that you can start to take these kind of things in on your own and do some learning, and also get some SHRM credit. You get 10 hours of SHRM CP upon completion of the Getting Talent Back to Work curriculum. And then CEO as an organization realized that to have the effect that we wish to have on this population, we needed to start thinking on the larger scale. So we understand that the need is there from a formerly incarcerated person's perspective. There's also a need from the corporate perspective. Talent is not easy to come by these days. So there's a large untapped talent pool that needs the assistance and that needs the guidance from the corporate world on how to bring it in. So we decided that we wanted to start widening our efforts and our mission involving, educating employers on how to make their work a little bit more inclusive. And what that means is, creating tools for human resources individuals. So we can provide services where we are, doing an audit of your HR policies and your practices. We're going to provide coaching and training for executives and management to better understand, what they're doing now and what they can do differently to shift and be a little bit more inclusive. As well as, helping people understand how to develop a pipeline. Their CEO is in 30 different cities, but we're not in a lot of other cities. So we want to talk to folks about how to find the right community partners to help you do this work well. And oftentimes, this kind of work cannot just be done top down, but it should include as much buy-in from as much staff as possible. We want to work with you to educate, again, not just the top down, or not just the executive level staff, but we want to educate everybody and get everybody an understanding of why, this employing formerly incarcerated people does not necessarily put you and your business at risk, but it often leads to greater outcomes for you and your business. Next slide. And now I just want to kick it back to my colleague, Elizabeth Knipp, and we can dive right into the panel discussion.
Great, thank you, Sam. And hi, everyone. I am Elizabeth Knipp. I'm the Development Associate of Individual and Corporate Gifts here at CEO, and I'll be moderating the panel discussion portion of this event, which will last for about the next 30 or 35 minutes. First, I have some individual questions for each panelist, and then I'll ask some additional questions for the group as a whole. I also encourage all of you attendees to throw any questions that you might have into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. These questions will be reviewed and then plugged into the end of the panel for us all to discuss. So now I'll go ahead and welcome all of our panelists to the floor. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. So yeah, thank you all for participating in our panel discussion today on inclusive hiring. Really appreciate you all taking the time out of your days to be here. First, I'd love to go around and just do brief introductions, providing the audience with a little background on yourself, including where you're calling in from, your job title, as well as the company that you're representing today. So how about we go ahead and get started with Jeff Korzenik.
Hi, I'm Jeff Korzenik. I'm the Chief Investment Strategist of Fifth Third Bank, and I'm also the author of a new book released this week called Untapped Talent, How Second Chance Hiring Works for Your Business and the Community. And I'm calling in from St. Petersburg, Florida.
Great, thank you, Jeff. And I'll transition over to the other Jeff, Jeff Veda, to introduce yourself.
Hi, good afternoon. How you doing? My name is Jeffrey Veda, and I'm a staffing manager in a staffing agency. I've been doing this since 2000, and I am calling in from New York City right now, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. How about Daryl Jones? Would you like to introduce yourself? You're on mute, Daryl.
There we go.
Perfect.
My name is Daryl Jones. I'm an active participant in the CEO organization, and I've been employed with CEO since 2019, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Daryl. And now, last but not least, I'll transition it over to Janelle to introduce yourself.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Janelle Washington. I'm a senior and learning development specialist at Vice Media Group. I've been with Vice for the past 2 years, and I manage all of our early career programs, similar to the apprenticeship and partnership we have with CEO.
Great. Thank you, Janelle. And also CEO Sam Hanna will be joining the panel discussion today as well. So thank you all for providing those intros. Now let's dive into the panel portion. To get things started, I'm going to go back to you, Jeff Korzenik. I have a couple questions. So Jeff, we're really, lucky to have you here today, given what a busy time it must be for you. As you mentioned, your new book was just released, titled Untapped Talent: How Second Chance Hiring Works for Your Business and Community. So to kick off the conversation, could you define for us second chance hiring and inclusive hiring and help us better understand how these are alike or different?
Sure, there are no accepted definitions, but to me, and this is a definition shared by others, inclusive is inclusive in the broadest sense. Are you hiring women and men? Are you hiring people of different backgrounds across the board? Second chance hiring, the way I use it and many others use it, is very specific to hiring people with a criminal record. The point that I think is really important is a lot of companies, maybe every company out there, has made some kind of commitment, at least in name, to inclusive hiring. Who wouldn't want to be inclusive? Who wouldn't want to attract as broad a talent pool as possible? But the reality is that the barriers of having a criminal record mean that inclusive efforts won't be successful at being truly inclusive until you match them with a program for fairly evaluating people with criminal records. Just on the numbers, there are 19 million people in the United States with a felony conviction and millions more with a misdemeanor. If you have a process that is automatically excluding people with those kind of records or disadvantages them, you are not going to be truly inclusive. And this crosses over, of course, with our criminal justice system being what it has been. This crosses over into issues of race. Sam gave a quote about sort of prospective possibilities in the Black community. Let's start with the reality today. The aftermath of our criminal justice system is such that 1 in 3 Black men in America have a felony conviction. Interestingly, by the way, fewer than half were convicted of something of sufficient threat to public safety to even warrant a prison sentence. But if you are trying to be inclusive across race and yet excluding people because of criminal convictions, it's not going to work. Our workforce cannot represent our population unless we are open to hiring people who have made mistakes in the past and giving them opportunities to rebuild their lives.
Thank you for that explanation and descriptions. So say I'm an employer and I'm thinking about adopting second chance hiring policies, inclusive hiring policies in my workplace. What advice do you have about things I should consider or how to get buy-in from my associates or employees?
You have to recognize, and I think this will probably come up in the panel discussion, that there are objections, of course, that come up to this. And each one of those objections are objections that you can address. You don't have to run away from them. You should face them. But in terms of getting buy-in, I think the most consequential thing you can do is to go visit with an employer that's already doing this successfully, because it gives you instant proof of concept. Many of the companies I've met with, including a company in Ohio that was the case study chapter of my book, started out by visiting a successful second chance employer. That was the aha moment that got the buy-in. Not every employee can go visit another company, but if you at least start with the executive and perhaps senior managers, that will give you a good head start in getting everyone on board.
Thanks. That response is a great transition into Jeffrey Veda's segment today. As Jeffrey Veda is senior recruiter at Broadway Personnel. So thanks so much, Jeff.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So yes, like I mentioned, Broadway Personnel is one of our close employer partners in New York City. So I'd love if you'd be able to tell us a little bit about your relationship with CEO and your experience working with business account managers in our New York City office. Also, how many of our participants have you been able to place at your through your staffing firm?
I believe I've been working with CEO for about a year now. And I was introduced to CEO through Jocelyn. She reached out to me through one of the ads I had placed as a recruiting method. And the way she introduced your organization and the way she described how you work with everybody and you teach them and you bring them into the workforce with such enthusiasm and willingness and desire to work, because they bring that themselves, but you're really just shining it up and, you know, getting them the opportunities. It was really easy to work with Jocelyn. She was always available. She knew about the positions that I was trying to fill, and we would work together to find the best individuals who would fit those positions based upon the requirements at hand. So it was a really nice introduction and a great opportunity to work with you all over there.
Great. I'm glad to hear it, Jeffrey. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Did you have any reservations or your colleagues about recruiting from, CEO's population? And what information did you receive from CEO that helped to quell those concerns?
I did not have really any reservations. I've been in recruiting for 21 years, and I've helped thousands of people find positions in different capacities, and I've helped people in different backgrounds, and second chances are not something that I'm new to, but the way CEO presents their graduates, it seems to be something very special, and it really works well because they're individuals who are just, really fabulous people. I'm an open-minded employer, so I meet with everybody and I establish a relationship with them. And after building a relationship and a trust, and I don't just put them on the job and then we don't talk to each other. For example, Daryl and I, we have each other's cell phones, and we have for about a year now. So he would text me with questions, or anybody that I've placed with you guys or any of my temps, I establish a relationship, and we grow together, and we speak. And if they have a problem, or if they can't make it to work, or if they're having a problem at work, I definitely am able to speak to them and work it out. And that's something that Jocelyn, was helping me out with as well. So she would, tell me how to work with everybody and give me some tips. And that was really very helpful. But it's really the CEO graduates that earned everything they got. Like, for example, Daryl is being promoted and going permanent. And that's the goal of all my relationships, is for someone to start out as a temp, as a probationary period, which I only do for much shorter period than most people do. It's only for 450 hours, which is approximately 11-12 weeks of full-time employment. And then they get a salary and benefits, but it's them that have to go to work every day and make it in the hard shifts. Sometimes it's overnight or through holidays, or whenever it is. Maybe they're not feeling the best. In COVID now, they have to stay home. But prior to that, you know what I mean? They really, in the first few months, they didn't want to miss any days because they wanted to really prove themselves. So I just bring them to the show, and then they're the ones who really make it shine and make it happen for them. But I do think that you guys are excellent for just giving second chances and helping them out and getting their names out, because it's hard for them to get their names out and their resumes out if it wasn't for you as their advocates, presenting them and pushing them and getting them into my hands and then into the other hands, and then they move on and then go forward. So it's a great circle and, you know, partnership.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jeffrey.
You're welcome.
And with that, I'm going to go ahead and transition over to Daryl. Hi, Daryl. Thank you so much for being here. And as Jeffrey mentioned, congratulations on your new promotion to front desk monitor at Volunteers of America. Also, I believe it's like your 1-year anniversary at Volunteers of America as well. So
Yes.
congratulations on that.
Yes, thank you.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'd love to talk a little bit more about how it's going there, and also spend some time talking about how you worked with CEO pre-placement.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So to start, I'm curious what specific elements of your experience working on CEO's transitional job crew helped to prepare you for your transition to Volunteers of America?
I think the first thing was the importance of being on time and at work, you know, when you're supposed to be, and the consequences for not being on time. It teaches you, it principles you for the workforce. Because when you go out on a regular job, they expect you to be on time. They shouldn't, you know what I mean? And I made that a point. I'm always 15 minutes early. So, and where I work at, they are definitely on, you know, if you don't come on time, you might get fired. So I work for Volunteers of America. I started out in maintenance, and I worked myself up into the office. I'm working in the office now. And my supervisor, I learned a lot mostly from Jocelyn's guidance, her and Miss Campbell. CEO is so, they instill that professionalism in you when you first, from the time you walk in the door. That's what they expect. And I think that's a good thing.
Great, thank you, Daryl. And just for some background to our attendees today, Jocelyn, who was referenced by Jeffrey and Daryl as well, she recently joined our team, but historically she's been a business account manager at CEO. And so she has worked very closely with both the employer side, Jeffrey, and the participant side, Daryl, in this, you know, relationship and with this, you know, Daryl's placement at Volunteers of America. So just wanted to give some background there. But yeah, Daryl, definitely admire you there as far as the 15 minutes before work, you know, arriving 15 minutes early. I feel like that's hard to do in New York, especially with the trains here. So I admire you for that. So curious, did you run into any obstacles or hardships when you first started at Volunteers of America? And how did the team at CEO help you to overcome those?
Okay, I think, yes, I did. I ran into, what I ran into was the stereotype, where people speak to you in a way that, you know, they see you as a criminal, as a past criminal. So you have to conduct yourself in a manner in your response to show them that I've changed, that I'm willing to work, I'm willing to learn. And you have to show patience. You can't explode, you know, you have to listen to people. People are different. You know, people are different. Everybody's different. That was a challenge for me. Yeah, it was, and you know, just working your way through the ins and outs of working in and within the system as a team. You know, you're joining a team, so you know you have to be able to function and, you know, interact with people in a respectful manner, you know, and do your job. You know. So,
Thank you. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, those were some of the challenges that I had to deal with. But I've come out on top because you know, they like me down there. So I guess I succeeded in what I was supposed to do. I wanted to represent CEO well. So.
Yeah, I would say a promotion is definitely succeeding there. Congrats again. So how has being employed at Volunteers of America positively affected other aspects of your life? What sort of career path do you hope to pursue from here?
Well, when a man comes out of prison, what you're looking for is stability. Volunteers of America and being hired as a regular worker every day, it gives me stability. I don't want to wake up in the morning thinking I might go to work and they tell me, yo, we don't need you, no, we don't need you anymore. So I'm looking for stability, a consistent income where I can take for myself and fend for myself. Financial. Everything's been going well for me because I got this job. I was able to get my own apartment. You know, I'm good. I'm good. Everything's going well for me. I'm just looking up.
Good, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Daryl, for sharing. I'm going to go ahead and transition over to Sam Hanna for these next couple of questions.
Okay.
Okay. So Sam, again, thank you so much for giving us an overview earlier of CEO's inclusive hiring work and our partnership with SHRM on their Getting Talent Back to Work tools. So I'd love to hear your answers to some of the top questions that you're asked when working to establish a relationship with a new company. So first, you mentioned that many folks from hiring teams are curious about the kinds of convictions our participants have and how recent those convictions were. How do you respond to questions like these?
Thank you. So typically I like to ask them another question. How relevant is the conviction and the timing around that conviction to the position that you're hiring for? Oftentimes employers will have blanket conviction statements over the jobs that they're hiring for and what convictions they can and cannot hire for. But ultimately what it should come down to is the conviction relevant to the work being done? Does the conviction, pose any sort of, additional, I don't want to say the word threat, but threat to the work being done? And can somebody, and then evaluate that person rather than on their conviction, but on their skill set and their experience.
That makes sense. Thanks, Sam. So also, let me also ask you a question that I know you get asked frequently, which is, what is the risk involved with hiring someone with a criminal record, and how do you go about doing so successfully?
Right. So as I stated a couple during the presentation, the risk associated with hiring someone with a criminal conviction is no greater than hiring somebody without a criminal conviction. Typically, it's because some of the points of that Daryl just made. People coming home from incarceration are not necessarily looking for a job so that they can ultimately put their freedom in jeopardy. People are looking for stability, and they're not really willing to sacrifice much to lose that stability. So as far as hiring somebody with a criminal conviction, what risk does that pose? I would ask an employer to evaluate the statistics and the facts around, what it really means to hire somebody with a criminal conviction. What does that, what has experience sort of taught the corporate world? And to point out, Jeffrey Korzenik made a great point. Reach out to other employers. There are employers in your network of people that that have hired people with criminal convictions, either accidentally or with the specific intention of giving somebody a fair shake at the same position as they would anybody else. And they'll often tell you that. So I've been working at CEO for a little more than 4 years as a business account manager, trying to help people get directly placed and working to create more of those transitional work career opportunities. And time again, we hear from employers who have been a little bit more open to hiring people with criminal convictions that when they do, they often find that it's not necessarily the criminal conviction in their history that gets in the way of them being a good employee. It's all the other barriers that they might face as a part of that criminal conviction and as a part of their release and the probation stipulations and things like that, that get in the way of them being a successful employee. Oftentimes I hear, that people with criminal record, they work harder than everybody else. They are more dedicated to the work. They're more excited about learning new things and are eager to grow. However, where people get, sort of tripped up is people with criminal record don't often have access to a vehicle or a driver's license. So getting to work in and of itself, getting to work 15 minutes early, if you don't live in New York City or a major metropolitan area that has really good public transportation, that can be incredibly difficult. You have to find ride-share services or carpooling, or you have to make friends with somebody at work that might be able to pick you up on the way. So there are a lot of those collateral consequences that are often the reason why people with criminal convictions get tripped up and aren't able to be as successful as they could be at their job, rather than it has something to do with them, their criminal convictions.
Great, thank you for that, Sam. So now the last panelist we have up is Janelle Washington. She's from Vice Media Group. CEO's partnership with Vice started back in 2017, when together our companies developed a competitive 6-month-long full-time apprenticeship program that exposed CEO participants to a wide array of creative disciplines like production, editing, marketing. Since then, the partnership has continued to grow, and through the apprenticeship program, I'm happy to say that some of these participants have been able to get placed in full-time roles at Vice. So Janelle, would you be able to share with us some of the successes of the apprenticeship program thus far and how you see it growing from here? What sort of new practices do you hope to put in place to support that kind of growth?
Yeah, well, since I've been with Vice since 2019, I think our partnership with CEO has been really successful. We've been able to employ some really talented, hardworking, and committed individuals. Some that, as you stated, are still employed with us today, who sits on our sales team, production, as well as facilities. And some of the things that I think that we can do on the Vice side to kind of strengthen the partnership as well as the program is get our apprentices more involved in the Vice culture. So what we do often is we do frequent check-ins with our apprentices, just to make sure that that 6 months that they're going through the apprenticeship, that it's going well. And one of the things that we did notice was that involvement and that sense of belonging piece. So what we plan to do in the future is kind of incorporate some trainings within the 6 months. So in addition to on-the-job training that they'll have with their immediate managers, we're going to incorporate some trainings that they can kind of get involved with that we already have internally, so that they can start building that sense of belonging, in addition to, strengthening the skills that they already have or already gained throughout that 6 months to either permanently stay at Vice or to go on externally.
That sounds like you have some great ideas there. I mean, I definitely think establishing trainings like those could really help as far as like gaining a sense of community at Vice for participants placed there. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Janelle. Okay, great. So now I have some questions for all the panelists. So anyone, please respond if you have an answer to these. So to start, why does this issue of inclusive hiring matter, and why should we care?
Let me jump in with the economic argument, because that's my day job, is being an economist. And first of all, even if you're not an employer, we all have an interest in this. And at one level, that interest is purely economic. Any economy's growth is ultimately dictated over the long term by two things: how fast can you grow your workforce, and how fast can you grow their productivity? We simply can't afford to ignore 19 million plus people and leave them either out of the workforce or underemployed, not able to participate to their full potential. So there's that level. And then there's another level that is more specific to employers. We are running out of talent in the United States. The baby boom generation is gradually retiring out. We've got the millennials, but birth rates have been declining in the United States since 1990, and we're running out of people. I'm going to add one wonky, add on to that, if you bear with me. Businesses in the past haven't had to worry that much about workforce shortages. Yeah, they worry about it, but it usually means it's about the end of the business cycle. conditions are tight, you can't find workers, but then next thing you know, there's a recession. That's partially dictated by the Federal Reserve Bank or central bank, which sets interest rates and tries to control economic cycles. They're operating under a new policy now. It's unlike anything they've had in the last the 100+ years of their existence. It is specifically to encourage what they are calling broad-based and inclusive employment. And what it means in effect is that when we get to tight labor markets, and they are coming and some industries are feeling them, they're going to last for years and years. There's a big talent hunt coming, and we can't ignore the very many talented people who happen to have made a mistake in their past. I'm off my soapbox now.
Thank you, Jeff.
I can speak to why Vice cares. Well, as you know, Vice Media is a very diverse media company. Our content is diverse, our people are diverse. So with this program, it adds that extra diversity piece to, our hiring process. So we can't overlook this population of people because of their past experiences if we're going to tell the world, hey, we're creating diverse content, we are diverse people. So I can say that's why Vice cares. We care to be inclusive. We care to be inclusive. We care to be able to provide opportunities for everyone who comes from every walk of life. Just to make sure we give opportunities to everyone.
Great, thank you, Janelle. So moving on to the next question. In your experiences, have you come across any common assumptions about second chance hiring that are harmful or incorrect?
Again, I'm sorry to jump in, but this has been the focus of my life for a number of years now. So generally the objections focus around three items. One, this kind of workplace safety liability that Sam addressed. The numbers just aren't there. It's not, if you do this right, working with partners like CEO that help you understand who is truly ready, you don't have any sort of significant risk. There are also legal remedies, what are broadly called certificates of rehabilitation, that people who've been out for a while can petition courts to get, that offer legal protections. But the reality, as Sam laid out, is if you do this right, the track record is not that you have extra risk with these employees, but the reality is you have extra opportunities. Similarly, there's a concern that second chance means second rate. That is also not true. Again, and I think people can hear it from Daryl's voice alone and his story. People who are ready to turn their life around are incredibly dedicated, highly engaged employees. And then there's this other fear of public reputation risk. And that might once have been true, but I think today, and this is kind of to Janelle's point, people expect the companies that they do business with to be involved in more than just making money. They want them to be involved in making a better community. And it's hard to do something more consequential than hiring people with records. So you see companies like Dave's Killer Bread, a big national bread bakery, proudly put it on the outside of every loaf of bread. They talk about being a second chance employer. It's a manufacturing company, Nehemiah Manufacturing, that does consumer goods. They have tags on their products. If you think our goods, our products are great, wait till you meet our people and talk about that story. So I think that those objections are false. There's not risk. There's not a quality problem, and there's not a reputation problem. But you do have to address those false concerns.
Thank you, Jeff. So it looks like we have a lot of questions from the audience, which I'm happy to see. So to start, we have a question for Sam. Can you take the SHRM course without doing the survey of 10 questions, resulting in the customized report, or are those two intertwined?
Yes, you can. You can absolutely take the SHRM course, the 10-hour certification, without doing the assessment. You also don't necessarily have to be a SHRM member to take the SHRM course. It's open and free to anybody who wants to take it.
Great, thanks, Sam. Another question for you. Does inclusive hiring include violent offenders?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely it does. Forgive me, my internet's a little bit wonky right now, so if I'm a little choppy, I'm sorry. But I just wanted to make the point specifically on, the question around violent offenses or offenses that may appear to be more severe. Typically, there is less risk associated with those people, specifically because they've done a larger amount of time while they were incarcerated. So there was more time to reflect, grow, gain skills, gain work experience, and then upon release, the risk of recidivating or the supervision on those people is probably a little bit more severe. So they have a lot more to lose.
Thanks, Sam. My next question is for Jeffrey Veda. This person has a cleaning contract starting in New York on June 1st. How can they start working with Jeffrey Veda to fill vacancies in those contracts?
I just would like to have a conversation, and it's very simple. I'm right in Penn Plaza on 34th Street, and I'm easily accessible, so I could exchange information after this meeting. That would be great. I have a lot of cleaning contracts, so I have candidates on staff, and I'd love to work with CEO with some more candidates.
Great, thank you, Jeffrey.
Thanks.
Okay, a question for Jeff Korzenik. Can you say more about why large employers in particular should care about inclusive hiring moving forward?
I think that
employers.
Sure. I mean, there's a couple of things that, as I alluded to before, I think the expectations of consumers have changed. They want the companies they do business with to be involved in problem solving. But I think there's also something to be said, and this is similar to Vice Media's approach. Most of our economy is driven by consumers. If we have 19 million plus consumers who've had some kind of common experience, if I'm in the business of selling products and services to consumers, why wouldn't I want my employees to understand the consumers better? I mean, this is a reflection of who we are, and so I think it comes. It's on the talent front, it's on the public relations front, and it's also on, I think you are better at the business you are in. I'll also add one twist. I can't prove it, but my observation of studying companies that have really undertaken this kind of supportive second chance hiring is the act of being really innovative and thinking outside the box to start second chance hiring bleeds into the rest of the company, and the whole these companies become energized and just become more creative and more innovative in their core businesses as well. So it just seems to have all sorts of follow-on benefits for companies.
Thank you, Jeff. Next question is for Daryl. Daryl, what do you think you need from your employer to grow in your career? And Daryl, you're on mute. Perfect.
Okay, I got you.
Great.
Okay. Now, what would my employer?
How could they help you to continue to grow in your career?
Wow. I guess you would say opportunity to excel, to go from a step further. To excel where I'm at, not to just stay in one place. Opportunity. It makes you feel good. It's a good feeling.
Yes, it definitely is. Thank you, Daryl. A question for all the panelists here. When a person is hired under the Fair Chance program, are there any requirements from them once they are hired that might not be required from a non-Fair Chance employees?
In my experience, it's just the same as for everybody else, and once you're hired, you run the same risk of getting fired as if you don't do the right thing, and you run the same risk of getting permanent placements and advancements if you continue to do the right thing. So there's no special agreements or contracts that I make anybody sign other than, the conversation that we have and continued relationship. So everyone's treated the same.
I just observe that is broadly true. Some of the companies I've studied do have some special requirements, but they are in a very supportive way. So for instance, it's a company in Ohio that hires directly out of prisons and halfway houses. And they want to make sure these employees are staying on track and prospering. So the business hired a life coach. And everyone has access to the life coach. Is free to use that resource, but they require it for, I believe, the first 6 months of people who've been hired from prison or halfway houses, just in the interest of making sure they thrive and knowing that they have a confidential resource to support them. So it's more in the sense of going the extra mile to provide support and ensure success. And a couple of other companies do similar things, but always with that kind of intention.
I think I'd like to just jump in briefly, something that both of the Jeffs mentioned. So treating everybody sort of on an equal playing field, understanding that somebody has a criminal record does not mean that they should be treated differently or treated specifically away because they have a criminal record. And then the other side of things is just have an understanding of somebody that has a criminal record likely has some additional barriers that just need to be known by the employer and understood by the employer. So creating a supportive environment that is in understanding that, hey, you know what, if John's late a little bit, potentially it's because of that, not because of negligence.
Great, thank you, Sam. So unfortunately, I see there are a couple more questions, but we're running out of time here. So I'll quickly answer this one. As far as the office in Memphis goes, yes, we do have a CEO office in Memphis, Tennessee. As far as the other few questions go, I think we could maybe circulate those answers after the webinar today. But I just want to, again, thank all of our panelists for being here and being a part of this discussion. Really appreciate you all. And I am going to go ahead and turn it on over to Niclese Richards to do a wrap up for the webinar.
Thank you all very, very much. That was deeply informative for me, and I'm hoping it was informative to all of our attendees as well. I sit in gratitude to all of you for sharing your time with us today. For all of our attendees, please reach out to us and let us know kind of what resonated with you following this event. We will circulate an email, which will include some of the resources that we've discussed during this webinar today. You'll have a link to the curriculum, the SHRM curriculum that CEO developed in partnership with SHRM, as well as a link to the assessment form where you can kind of take your own temperature and figure out your readiness to employ inclusive hiring at your place of work. And there will be a survey as well for everyone to complete. We'd love to hear your feedback on how this webinar went today and kind of what you'd like to see us do going forward. In addition to inclusive hiring, I must say, CEO, outside of our program model and outside of the inclusive hiring work that we've already been doing, there's so many great ways for corporations to connect with us and engage with us. A partnership with us is highly customized, right? Keeping your needs, your interests, and your goals top of mind and in the center of all discussions. So with that, I think we're at time, and thank you all for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your day.